Whenever we read in data from a CSV, it may not have the proper column names that we desire. What I've learned over time is that you really don't want any spaces in a data frame column name because it prevents you from using certain readable dot notation. You also may want to just flat out call something a different name to make it more descriptive. Let's look at some examples of renaming columns. First, let's select the columns we want and create a new data frame. So like we saw before, we can select the column names we want, which let's say player name, games played, and minutes. And let's just save this down to a new data frame. And if we look at a sample of the data frame, we see we have the player name, the games played, and the minutes. And let's go ahead and just save this to our slimmed down data frame. Now, let's rename GP as games played and MIN as minutes by passing df.columns and updated lists. Even though we aren't changing player name, we still need to pass the full column name list since it goes in order. So we could call the data frame and then the dot columns, and what we want to say is, hey, these are the column names we want, and in the specific order of how the data frame is currently configured. So if we run this, and now we go back and look at our data frame, you'll see we have the updated column names, player name, games played, and minutes. We could also save the new column names in a separate Python list and set that equal to the df.columns. This will replace the column names in the exact order they are in the list. It will also overwrite the original names. So if we wanted to create a Python list with new column names, and we'll set it equal to player, let's just do games P and minutos, just to change it up. And we run that, and then like before, we dot columns, and we just set that equal to our new Python list. And if we look at our data frame, we should see the column names with our renamed column names. But more often than not, we are going to have many columns, which would make it difficult to remember them all and time-consuming to type them all out. A better approach is to use the Pandas rename method. The Pandas rename method allows us to change multiple column names by passing a dictionary with the old column name and the new column name as the key and value pair. We separate each key value pair with a comma, just like a normal Python dictionary. Let's use our same example, but this time rename it to what we had before. One callout is that this method does not modify our original data frame, so we want to save it to a new data frame. So we have our data frame, and we're going to call the rename method. And again, the rename method takes columns as a dictionary. So it takes the old name, which let's go back and rename games P as the key, and the new name, and let's call it again games played since that's more descriptive, comma, and let's also rename minutos. I thought of that because if you ever listen to a Miami Heat game, the very last 2 minutes, the announcer shouts out, "Dos minutos." And let's rename that again, minutes. And again, we need to save this to a new data frame. And if we run it, our df new should be back to what we originally had. And wow, what a random sample of 10. Tristan Thompson, Paul Pierce, Millsap, LBJ, The Duds, BC alum, Vince Carter, Bradley Beal, Terrence Jones, Tony Parker, Wade. That is a fearsome random sample. So again, we get the same results as before, but this time only focusing on the columns we want to change. And again, we could add more or less here depending on what we wanted to change.